On episode 8 of the PCT Podcast, we speak with Max McLellan, who is part of the media team at Millwall Football Club. Max offers an insight into his journey into football journalism and an insight to what goes on behind the scenes at a football club. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like our content, drop us a review or drop some feedback. Enjoy.
Good evening, Max. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us on the PCT Podcast. How are you during this lockdown period we're currently facing?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've never been fitter, I don't think. I'm going for walks, I'm going for runs, and playing a lot of Xbox.
Yeah. I think it's a good time for us all to just come out of the fast lane a little bit and, like I say, we might not have been able to in the past. I was just going to ask you, how are you using your time? Obviously, keeping fit.
Yeah, keeping fit, playing a lot of Xbox with the boys. Still doing a bit of work, like for my job and that. You know, preparing stuff just in case we come back, preparing stuff for next season, just sort of ideas and brainstorming. Really, it's sort of like the no man's land area when the season ends to pre-season, that May-June period where, you know, there's not a lot going on, but you use it to prepare for the upcoming season.
So yes, you mentioned there you're just taking over at the minute. Can you tell us and the listeners a little bit about yourself and sort of your current role?
Yeah, so I work as a media assistant at Millwall Football Club down here in London. I think I've been in the football industry now, I think 3 years. I started at Vale in January 2018, and that was my first football club to work for. That was my first job in the industry. But yeah, I've only just joined Millwall, but obviously because of this corona stuff, I think I only covered about 4 games before everything got suspended. So yeah, just sort of getting used to the new club, the new expectations, and just gaining more experience at a higher level at the moment.
I mean, you mentioned obviously your role there. How did that come about, and when were you first sort of exposed to media and broadcasting?
I started wanting to get into this industry when I was about, I think, 15, 16. I think that's the age in sixth form. I originally actually wanted to be a lawyer, okay, but I saw how much studying you had to do and how many books you had to read, and I didn't really fancy that. And it was just by chance, actually. I've always liked the media side of things and everything like that. I've been quite savvy with it, so it was quite lucky. We had to get a 2-week work experience placement when I was at school, and this was when I was living in Spain, in Madrid. And luckily, talking to one of the teachers, he said that one of the parents from the school, he was a producer at Real Madrid TV, and said he'd have a word with him. So I said, yeah, that'd be great. And thankfully, he accepted and said, come along for the 2 weeks. Which was just unbelievable. Like, the fact that a football club has got their own TV studios alone says, how big they are in terms of the media side of things. And that just gave me like a taste of what it was like to work, not only sort of in the media, but also within a football club. And it was brilliant. I got to meet the producer, the production team, the presenter. And what opened up my eyes is that the presenter wasn't just the presenter. He was also editing videos behind the scenes as well. And that was sort of my first, thing that I picked up, is that you're not just a presenter. You've got to be, you've got to be able to multitask and sort of change station when needed to. And that was really where it kicked off. And luckily I met a journalist called Sid Lowe, who works for The Guardian and covers the Spanish football for The Guardian out there. And I just asked him, can I get any work experience with you? Are you doing any press conferences? Can you take me to any games? And he said, well, I'm going to, I think it was the international weekend, and he said he's going to the Spanish press conference with Vicente Del Bosque, the Spanish manager at the time, and he took me along and I got to ask him a question. I just loved the buzz of being able to ask someone like that a question. So that's where it all started. I completely forgot about the lawyer stuff straight away, and I was thinking about the media side.
I can imagine that must have been a real wow moment to sort of whet the appetite of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, it was just incredible, and it really gave me a taste of the real world, and seeing it's not just 11 men on the football pitch. This is everything that goes on behind the scenes as well. And I remember it was a Champions League week coming up in about 10 days' time, I think. And they were preparing Champions League highlight packages and stuff like that, and speaking to, I think they were playing Copenhagen, and they were talking to the Copenhagen team, you know, about transferring videos to each other, and just sort of that buzz of, you know, you're talking to a different football club on such a official, professional terms. It just gave me a proper buzz just to see everything behind it.
Yeah. I mean, from there, you sort of went and studied your broadcast journalism at Staff's Uni. When did you make the move over to the UK? Was it studies?
Yeah, it fell quite nicely that me and my family all moved back in 2014, July 2014, and then I just finished my A-level, so I was going to start university, whatever, in September. So luckily we moved back then, and I think I moved up to Stoke at start of September and started from there. And it was a 3-year course, and it was probably the best 3 years of my life. Like, I loved it.
I mean, for me, I've not had the joy of going to university. So what did the course entail?
There was a lot of things, really. The first year is a bit of a weird one. It just sort of introduces you to journalism as a whole and what you're going to be doing. But luckily with Staff's Uni, they're a great uni for what I was studying. And we had our lecturers were, you know, previous BBC journalists and stuff like that, who could give you real first-hand experience. So it was stuff like, you know, shorthand. It wasn't my favourite shorthand. It's sort of an old-fashioned thing. And the worst thing about shorthand was it was on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. and the night before was your student night out. So I was never really the brightest on the Thursday morning. But the thing what I loved about it was you had a weekly news day. So we had a studio, you know, up to par with a BBC studio, where you had your cameras, your production areas, your computers to produce stuff. And one week you could be a reporter, so you'd go out and get a story, or the next week you could be the producer, where you're organising what everyone does. So you get a different feel of every sort of role within a newsroom, and you could be a presenter one week as well. So again, it highlighted to me about, you know, the need to be able to multitask and if I'm needed in one area, I can comfortably jump to that area. So it was a valuable experience for me.
See, that first year sounds like quite a holistic approach to journalism. Did you gain any work experience whilst doing your studies?
Yeah, in my second and third year, I think it was in Nantwich, a community radio station called Redshift Radio. And I did a bit there. They gave us a 1 hour slot I think it was every week or once a month, I can't remember, where basically we just had our own show, so we could present or produce it and just go from there and get a feel of what it's like to present on a strict time schedule, you know, to a live audience and stuff like that. So that was a big learning curve for me, and it taught me to be disciplined with my timings and stuff like that, and to be organised, because, you know, I think you can realise when on a radio station, you know, timings have got to be important. And I've learned that when I was working at Ball Vale and Millwall with transfers, you know, timings are vital. You've got to be spot on. And I also did a bit with BBC Radio Stoke. I know Lee Blakeman quite well, the commentator, and I just said to him, can I come to a couple of Port Vale games, just see how you do it, the commentary, how you make notes and stuff like that. And I was doing match reports off that. So that gave me, again, real life experience of what it was like to work in the industry, and it was really good.
I mean, as I take the sort of pathway into podcasting, I'm fortunate enough where we get the chance to edit anything if needed. How did you feel the first time you went out to a live audience?
You know what? I can't remember who told me, but I was just imagining I was just talking to my nan, and that's what I try and do every single time if I present on camera or, you know, do an interview with someone on camera. I always think I'm talking to my nan. It sounds really weird, but when you're with your nan, you naturally talk a bit slower, you try and talk a bit clearer, and that's just what I try to do. And if you block out the idea that you're live, your imagination could kill you live on air if you're thinking, I'm broadcasting to hundreds of people and stuff like that. And for some people, it might be a bit overwhelming, but I just used to think, right, it's just my nan listening. I'll take it nice and relaxed, be nice and cool, and try and go from there. I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. I made mistakes. There's times where it gets a bit awkward. You sort of don't know how to fill the pause, but you just learn, as you develop more experience and do it more often.
So after graduating then, was there a particular industry or sport that you wanted to go into, or was it always going to be football?
I always wanted to go into football. I just love football. I don't even see it as a job. The fact that I can get paid to do what I do is just a bonus, because when you love something that much, it's, who wouldn't want to just watch football, write about football and talk football, as a job. And actually the course at university sort of put me off going into sort of like news journalism and paper reporting, that sort of thing. And I'm not saying like, all journalists are bad and everything like that, not at all. It's just some things that put you off. You always get asked, if you were put in a scenario, what would you do? And the scenario would always be, what happens if, your editor tells you to go around someone's house after their son's just been killed in a road accident and try and get a quote from the parent? What'd you do? And I'm like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. And you always get told, well, some editors might make you do that, and you see a lot of situations like that at times where you read a paper, you read an online article and you think, how can you write about someone like that?
Yeah. And
that just sort of put me off it. And the more I was going to Port Vale with the BBC and seeing other people in those sort of roles, I was just like, that would be brilliant for me to get into. And that's what I really wanted.
Did you have a sort of an expectation that once you graduated, you were going to walk straight into a role, or was
there's not like the expectation, because you understand that it's a hard industry to break into, but I didn't realise just how hard it was. When I actually graduated from university, I knew it'd be tough, but I didn't think it would be as tough as it was. Yeah. And there's one thing my dad always told me, is that, people think because they graduate and they've got a piece of paper showing that they've got a degree, they'll just slap that on a table and say, look, give me a job off that. Mm. But he always said, if people came to him like that, he'd be like, right, if I've got someone who's got no degree but plenty of experience, but then someone who's just got a degree and no experience, who am I going to choose? I'll go with the experienced one. Cool, yeah. So that's why I always try to think, I've got to get more experience and get stuck into it, really. But it's always tough when you leave university, because sometimes you'll see a lot of people go to, a paper, a local paper or something like that. And that's maybe slightly easier to get into than it is to the football industry, because so many people, young blokes like me want to be doing that sort of thing. And I was being unrealistic. I'm from London myself, so I was being so narrow-minded. I was like, no, I don't want a job outside of London. I want to stay down here. My mates are down here. My friends are down here. I want to work at a Premier League club. And, looking back on that, I just think, it's just too narrow-minded. So I had to accept, that I wasn't qualified enough to work for these Premier League clubs yet. And that was just me just trying to aim high and hope that someone would take a chance on me. And you realise when you're in the industry now, what the expectations and how much demand there is at a Premier League club, that it would have been far too early for me. So I had to be patient and just bide my time.
We spoke obviously away from the podcast that whilst you were waiting for that role and those expectations you said you had, you got yourself a job as a waiter just to plug the gap as such. Was there any times where you felt frustrated and thought, I'm never going to get that break?
I felt frustrated that my parents were kicking me out of the house to get a job, because I was enjoying sitting out in the garden in the summer. But the one thing I always say to people is I got the first interview for Vale. I think it was the end of November. Towards the end of November, Colin Garlick sent me an email saying that I got an interview, and it was getting to about October time, and I was just like, when is this going to happen? But that's because I'd seen other people, even in other degrees, you know, not just journalism, just graduating and just getting a job. And I'm thinking, why isn't this happening to me? But you have to be patient. You know, these jobs don't come around all the time. And a lot of the times they actually come early summer because it gets quieter and people see that as a good opportunity to move on. So a lot of the jobs in football are in the summer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I'd be lying if I was saying I was just like, have I got to look elsewhere now because it's just not going to happen for me. And you know, thankfully Vale popped up and it went from there. Yeah, it was a weird time, sort of between that June, November time, because I, as you said, I was a waiter at a restaurant. I didn't want to take promotions there because I didn't want to get in too deep and sort of lose sight of what I really wanted to get into.
Yeah. I mean, would you say that Port Vale interview, which in turn you were successful from, was that a make or break moment in your career aspirations?
It was a big moment for me. Like it just was, because that was my first interview at a football club since graduating. So I just made sure that I was fully prepared for it, and I had everything I needed just to try and blow them away. Like I wanted to go into that interview knowing that I'd just show them everything that I can possibly do for the club, and not walk away with sort of any regrets. And I remember going up there, and it was made easier with Port Vale because obviously I'd been going to a few games before. You know, I'd lived in the area. So it made it a bit easier for me. I wasn't going to an area which I didn't know at all. But the fact that it was my first one, I just made sure that I was absolutely prepared to the max. You know, I had a presentation on me, a PowerPoint presentation showing, you know, what they're doing at the moment and where they can improve, you know, the website, the social media channels. And I took my dissertation video along just to make sure that I had every angle covered. And it wouldn't have, you know, broken me if I didn't get it. Obviously, I would have been very disappointed. But I think, you know, I had interviews before I came to Millwall at different clubs, and I didn't get them. But it just gave me a bit more experience and a bit more know-how on what to expect if I got future interviews.
I mean, just going on that, just for anybody who's looking to get into journalism and sort of within football, how well did you prepare for that interview? I know you said you took quite a lot along with you.
Yeah, massive.
What advice would you give?
I basically searched every single social media thing they had, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and I made note of what they do, YouTube as well, you know, what's put out there, how consistent is it put out there, and is there a pattern where fans can expect, you know, they know what they're going to see. They can think, right, next Tuesday, I know there's going to be a certain video feature that I can look forward to. And there wasn't that. And you know, that's no disrespect to the previous person who was doing it, because it's a really tough job, you know. But I just looked at every single angle possible and just thought, right, how can I improve this? Whether it's possible or not, whether I've got the financial backing or anything like that, just bring the ideas. And then you just roll with it like that. So I looked at all the website, the social media channels, and the one thing I still do now, and one thing I was doing a lot at Vale when I got the job, is keep an eye on Premier League clubs and see what they do. And I always said to the guys that worked with me at Vale, you know, just because we're a League Two club doesn't mean we have to act like one. You know, let's be a Premier League media team. Let's try and put out content which is as good as a Premier League team or a Championship club. Mm-hmm. So I just try to go with that angle, and you know, you see a lot of Premier League clubs doing all these videos with their players. They've got green screens, stuff like that. You're obviously not going to have a green screen at lower league level if you haven't got the backing or anything like that. So what sort of ideas can you get with that and adapt it to your own sort of, you know, with the tools that you've got, and that's what I try to do.
It sounds like a very challenging but rewarding sort of role that you've been in. Yeah. Since obviously your time at Port Vale, have you seen both sides of football, sort of the highs and lows of a club?
Yeah, I think it's well documented with Port Vale. You know, the highs and the lows. Obviously, the lows. When I first came in, I felt like a real bad voodoo, because when I started, I think it was in January, and Vale didn't win another game for 3 months, and I was just, you know, trying to do social media when a team's not winning. You know, the fan base was split. The team wasn't winning. You know, the fans, you know, obviously had their arguments, and you know, they opposed the owner, Norman Smurfway, at the time, and you know, they had their reasons to do that. But it's so difficult to try and do social media through those tough times. But I tried my best. You know, and it was two bad seasons. You know, my first 2 seasons were bad, you know, because of the results and the off-field issues. But then you obviously see, you know, John Ashkey come in, and that was that's probably one of the biggest changes for me at Vale, is John Ashkey coming in. Just the level of professionalism he's brought to the club, and the way he's organised it. Obviously, you know, the fans, you know, the way they were, in terms of voicing their opinions in a respectful way, and just showing how passionate they are about the club. Obviously, Carol and Kevin Shanahan coming in, that's made a big difference as well, and changed a lot for the club. So yeah, I've seen plenty of lows, and I've seen, you know, some highs as well, and hopefully the club's on and up, because it's a great club. The fans were so unbelievable with me there during my time, and I just hope now that they're on the up for the future.
I just wanted to go back to something I picked up on there. You mentioned, obviously, it was a bit of a rough spell, and you maybe felt like you were a bit of a voodoo to the club. Did you take any notice of any comments on social media and let it affect the way that you work? Again,
yeah, at the start I did, because I was new to it. I wasn't used to it. You know, you get a following of people. They know, you know, they know you're in that role, and they see the work you produce. And even though, you know, sometimes you put out a video or a bit of content. I remember in the second season we did the FIFA videos, and someone put, "Oh, why have we got this rubbish on here? They should be out training." And even though they're not saying, you know, that you're rubbish, you take it to heart, because you know it's your work.
Yeah, and you try your best, as you say.
Yeah, you know, and at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, the club becomes a part of you. It really does. You care about it. You want it to be successful. You see how much effort the players and the management team are putting in, and you know yourself how much work you're putting in behind the scenes. So when you put a bit of work out, it just gets shot down. It was really demoralising, especially at the start. And you'd also get, and you know, I used to nibble at the start really badly, and you get the comment back, you know, you're just an employee, you're not a fan, you don't care about the club, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, you do. You know, you feel it with the players, you feel it with the management. You know, you're down if you lose, you're high as a kite if you win. So yeah, I did used to take it to heart at the start, but then you just sort of you get used to it. You grow thicker skin, and at the end of the day, you learn not to take it personally, because you know you're never ever going to please everyone on social media.
I know, Matthew, and you mentioned there that there's been a rise in fortune, obviously, in the club. It's great to see not only the club on and up, that working at the club as well. You see positivity around the place. How much of an impact has, you know, the new owners had, and as we say, Sir John, as to Maxfield fans?
Yeah, well, obviously, like, you know, a new ownership needed to happen. It got to a point where Norman Smurfway obviously just wasn't interested. You know, he was putting, you know, we were worried behind the scenes about our jobs, especially for me moving up from London. You know, I'd rent to pay. You know, if I wasn't going to be paid, then I couldn't afford to live in the flat that I was in. Yeah. So it got to a point where the new owners had to come in, and they did it. They've done a really good job. You know, they've brought the club together. You know, but a lot of the staff at the club have done a great job as well. There was a lot of us, you know, staff-wise, that had, I think, you know, I can honestly say, hand on heart, we gave it 100%, even under Norman Smurfway, to try and keep the club up and be positive, especially on the media side. And the staff that were there when the new owners came in, they'd done a good job under bad ownership, and now was the chance to do even better under good ownership. So the staff at the club, I think, have to get a lot of, you know, credit for the turnaround as well. Obviously, the new owners and what they've done in terms of, you know, looking after the players, stadium improvements, and just actually giving the club a bit of love. And obviously, yeah, John Askey, you know, he came in at such a hard time. You know, it was, you know, I think it was a time where it could have gone so much worse. But John Askey, you know, Port Vale lost the first 4 games under John Askey.
Yeah.
And what fans don't see is that, you know, it's not the John Askey effect not working. John Askey's had to inherit a squad which, you know, wasn't performing on the pitch. There were problems off the pitch, behind the scenes, you know, and John Askey's got to deal with those sort of problems, and he's got to find his own identity. He's openly admitted himself that, you know, the first few games maybe he listened a bit too much to other opinions rather than what he believed in, which was his football philosophy of a 4-3-3 high press. And if you've got that sort of you know, football formation that you want to play and style of play that you want to play, but you haven't got the players to do it, you know, because you haven't had the January transfer window, it's going to be tough. And it all changed at that Notts County game when Vale drew 0-0, but the away support was just outstanding. And then it just sort of went from there and improved. And I saw, you know, I went with the players and the management to Scotland, for the pre-season. And this was John's first, you know, summer getting the players in that he wanted. And he was getting grafters in. He was getting players that he knew had a winning mentality. And the pre-season was great to see him and Dave Kevin and, you know, the likes of Dan Thompson and Danny Pugh. You know, all of us I feel like we really gelled on that pre-season, and it was a good, solid pre-season where they were able to implement their ideas and get the boys playing the way that they would want them to play.
Yeah.
And I think that was huge, and it's paid off. I think you can see it's a totally different performance on the pitch with not too many different players.
Yeah. And again, you say they've been a club on the up. So when it came to the FA Cup tie with Man City, which may I add, I think the club and the team got many plaudits for the way that they performed despite the result. That must be up there of one of your top moments in your career to date. Unbelievable.
And what made it even more special for me was that we got asked by the BBC to go to the draw, and, you know, I said to John, right, I'm going up to cover the game, and I said to John Rudge, you know, it'd be great if you come along. Mm-hmm. And given the history that John Rudge has with the FA Cup, it just felt so special that we got Man City and he was there live to witness it, you know, because you hear all the stories about how, you know, he managed the team against the likes of Tottenham and Everton and the FA Cup and Port Vale, you always associate John Rudge with it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he was there, and the car journey back, I sort of had to pinch myself and think, you know, there are so many Vale fans that would love to be in this position right now, just to sit in a car with John Rudge and just talk football with him. Yeah. And I never took my time with John Rudge for granted, because he was such a gentleman, and to be able to share that night with him was just unbelievable. And, you know, we got there and we sat down, me and John, just before the draw was done live, and we were looking out on the pitch, and Raji was like, you know, he was saying, oh, imagine if we were playing out there. And I was like, it'd just be unbelievable. Like, just think of that, Port Vale here. And then it actually happened. It was just incredible. And the whole day itself was absolutely magical. And the big thing for me was that we scored a goal, you know, when it actually meant something. You know, I think we all would have we would have taken the day as it was, you know, whatever the result. But the fact that we scored a goal to equalise at the Etihad and was just so magical. It was a special day just to see the fans, you know, in the away and going absolutely crazy when Popey scored. It genuinely was a day I'll never, ever, ever forget.
Just in terms, and I'm probably going off track a little bit here, just in terms of the build-up to that game, there was a lot that was said about Popey and Stones. Yeah. Was much notice paid by Popey in that, or is it just to go out and enjoy the experience and deflect?
Yeah, we had, you know, the weeks leading up to it, we obviously had a lot of media attention, and that was, you know, you had a lot of people who wanted to just speak to Popey about John Stones, but our aim was, you know, if you want to come in and speak to Popey, you speak to Popey about the FA Cup. You know, this isn't about John Stones. This is about Port Vale getting an FA Cup third round draw at the champions of England, the champions of the FA Cup, and talk about Popey's brilliant hat-trick against Cheltenham. And that's what Popey wanted to talk about as well, you know. You obviously get a lot of people who took the John Stones stuff out of context. You know, fans want players who aren't robotic on social media. They want players who are just open and honest. They want human beings at the end of the day. And Popey was that. He was a football fan at the end of the day, giving his thoughts on an England performance from an England player. And obviously, you know, you've got people who will go back that far to resurface the tweet. So there was a lot of attention towards that, but we just wanted to keep it focused on the fact that Port Vale were going to Manchester City and we're taking 8,000 fans to the Etihad. And it was because, you know, of the team effort. It was because of John Askey. It was because of Port Vale Football Club.
Again, plaudits not just from Port Vale fans, but I think across the city came from the performance live on television as well, and the massive backing that the club took. So lots of positives then. Quite potentially could have derailed the season, but I think a lot of positives were taken. And, you know, if the season is to get back underway, I think, you know, you could be just an outsider in this sort of dark shadows to come.
And I wish the Man City game had come as soon as the draw had been made, because there was so much attention on the Man City game.
Yeah.
We had 7 games in between, I think. 7 games in between the draw being made and the Man City game actually being played. Oh. And a few results tailed off, you know, and it was one of them where you just sort of like, there was a press conference. You'd struggle to have a press conference where Man City wasn't mentioned. Yeah. And John Askey was so focused, you know, at the end of the day, the Man City game was a bonus. The main priority is the league. And John Askey maintained that the players have to keep focused on the Manchester City game. The league games, not Manchester City. So that was like, as excited as we were for it, it didn't really hit us until we'd, you know, finished the Macclesfield Town game really on New Year's Day. And it was when I got home, I was like, right, bloody hell, like, next is Man City. That was the first time really that I'd had a proper chance to think, right, we're going to the Etihad, because we wanted everything just to be focused on the league games, you know, and that was from a media point of view and the media output. If we didn't have to post about Man City, we wouldn't, because, you know, at the end of the day, you've all got the same goal, and that's to do well in the league. You know, you want to be singing from the same hymn sheet as John Askey and the players, and keep everyone focused on the league.
I mean, a lot that came out from the game, and you clearly see that the relationship you had with some of the players. Moving forward from the season now, did that sort of kick you on from that point? And when you covered the game, obviously, I think a lot came out about how Manchester City showed their class. How good were the staff at Manchester City?
Oh, they were brilliant. They were honestly brilliant. I was a bit worried about being a pain in the arse for the Man City media team, because obviously I had never covered a game of this size before. And the media afterwards are obviously going to be after a lot, you know, John Askey, Tom Pope and stuff like that. So I was really worried about missing things. You know, there's certain, you know, things that you have to do after a game. You have to attend a post-match press conference. You have to send the players through the mix zone. So I was, you know, peppering the Man City media team with questions, and they were absolutely brilliant with me. You know, they understood this was a new thing for me. For them, this was a quiet day at the office for them.
Right.
You know, but for us, for me, this was like a big thing to try and get everyone what they needed. And thankfully we did. And that was because they helped us so much. And then obviously, you know, it's well documented about everyone being invited into the Man City dressing room afterwards. And that showed, you know, a touch of class from Man City. You know, they all invited us in. We met the players and everything like that. And the Man City players, you know, posed for pictures with everyone. They gave the Vale players their shirts and stuff like that, signed them. So they were brilliant, you know. And John Askey and his agent Nick Bianchi were talking about, you know, Pep Guardiola inviting them in and having a glass of red wine, and they were just brilliant, you know. They were fantastic with everyone, and they said, I think they said to Dave Kevin, they prepared for the Vale game like they had done a Champions League game.
Right.
So, you know, they were very respectful to us as well.
I say that's a big compliment.
Yeah.
And obviously going from the highs of the Man City game, it could be quite easy to go back to the sort of, I'm not going to say run of the mill, but, you know, League Two games. And then came the interview with Stoke-on-Trent's son, Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
Not only obviously a star locally, but globally. How did you feel in the lead up to the interview with Robbie? And just for the listeners, give us a bit of context of how that came about.
Well, the Robbie Williams thing came about literally, I can't remember, it was just before or just after the actual FA Cup draw. So that week as a whole was just absolutely crazy. To find out you're playing Man City in the FA Cup. And then I remember it, I got home, it had been a really, really long day. And I got home, I was sat down having my dinner, and colleague Garlick, the chief exec, called me in the evening. And he said, I just want you aware that a press release might go out tomorrow about Robbie Williams performing at Vale Park. And I'm like, all right, okay. That's not my normal Tuesday night to get that sort of news. And the first thing I said to him was just like, wow, but we have to get an interview. We have to get an interview. Straight away, I was just thinking from the media department point of view, how can we get Port Vale's social media presence on the up through Robbie Williams? And from then it was just a bit crazy. I went in the next day and we had to work, you know, with Robbie's media team and management team to get a press release out. And it was, everything just happened so fast, you know, from the morning before thinking, you know, it's a normal week, to then having Man City in the FA Cup, and then Robbie Williams putting out a statement about Robbie Williams performing in the summer. It was just absolutely crazy. And in the build up to the interview, I was actually okay. I was a bit nervous. You know, you got one of the biggest pop stars in the world come in and you're going to do an interview with him. But I didn't know whether it had actually happened. I was prepared. They said we could do it. And we got the backboard done and everything. He involved a local film company from Birmingham called Hello, We Are Blink. They were brilliant. They've helped us with the kit launch before. And we got them in to set up the filming. But because he arrived late, he was filming a couple of music videos on the pitch and also doing his press conference at Vale Park. And I was being cheeky. I was like, right, I said all along, we need to get this interview first. We need to be the first ones to interview him before he goes to a press conference, before he does anything else media-wise. We would really like him first. And Robbie's manager was like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, wow, like, we're actually going to do it. Like, and he came out and I shook his hand and I introduced myself and we just started talking. It was crazy. I wanted to speak to him before we went to the interview, just so he was comfortable. I didn't want him feeling uncomfortable and being like, who's this? So, you know, we just had a little chat and we were walking along, you know, the Lawn Street stand, just talking. And he was proper down to earth. He was a nice bloke, and all the nerves just went, whatever nerves were there. And I just thought, like, you know, it's just another human being at the end of the day that I'm talking to. And yeah, there's always a time where in an interview you might stutter a little bit or you might go on a little bit. But when I watch it back, I don't want to sound big-headed, but it genuinely probably was one of my best interviews because it just flowed out of me and it just flowed really well. And I remember preparing for it before he actually got to Vale Park, and I was sat there with, you know, the media team at Vale with me and the camera crew, and we were rehearsing it, and I just couldn't get the first question out. I just couldn't say it. I kept stuttering. I kept saying the wrong words. I kept saying it wrong. And then we sat down and it just came out like that, and it just went from there. It was brilliant.
So during that interview, were you talking to Robbie Williams or were you talking to Nan?
A bit of both.
Yep.
But no, I always, like I said, I always have my Nan in my thoughts because I always think just talk nice and clear and slowly, and that's what I try to do. But you know, Robbie was really good. He was nice and calm. He was relaxed. We had submitted the questions that we wanted to ask to him, to his management team before, and they were fine with the questions. So it was good that he was nice and relaxed, and it was good that we managed to have a chat before. And I think I had to cut my head or something, and he was giving me a bit of stick about it. So it was nice just to have a bit of banter with him, just to break any tension and sort of chill out with him a bit.
Quite a few massive highs so early on in your career, really, and then a move to Millwall came about. Was that based on sort of aspirations, home life, or a bit of both?
Aspirations mainly, because I've always sort of wanted to work at a higher level. Like I said, when I graduated from university, I wanted to go straight to the Premier League. But when you're at, it was really hard for me to go, because I had such a good connection with the club, with the fans, with the players and the manager and that. I loved it there. But I don't want it to sound bad to the Port Vale, but I didn't want to get too comfortable and sort of miss an opportunity to try and work at a higher level. I thought I'd done everything that I could possibly do to try and help the media department at Vale, and I thought it was the right time for me to test myself at a higher level and gain more experience, because you don't get a budget at that sort of level. You sort of try and do everything that you possibly can, with what you've got. A lot of the work that I was doing at Vale was self-taught as well, and just picking up ideas as I went along. And I feel that I needed to make that step higher, to sort of be managed a little bit as well, because you're doing everything yourself at Vale, and you're teaching, the interns that are helping you out as well. You haven't got anyone above you to sort of say, right, you've done that well, but you haven't done that so well. Maybe you could expand it like this. And that's what I felt like I needed. And I felt if I moved to a higher club and went to a club like Millwall, I can work for a head of media who's, the head of media at Millwall, Bill Taylor. He's a great bloke. He's been there about 9 years. So to work for someone like that who's got so much experience at a championship club, working in the Championship and League One, there's so much that they can teach me and that I can learn from, and sort of work for a higher demand, and test myself like that. But it like I said, it was so hard to leave Vale, and the reception the fans gave me, on social media and in person at games, they were just so brilliant with me. So, but and again, it was back home as well for me. It's close to my friends. At the end of the day as well, I've been living in Stoke for 5.5 years, and it was probably the right time for me to go.
I can imagine it's been a little bit frustrating then, taking that step up, and you wanted to hit the ground running, and then obviously something out of the blue like this is derailed.
Yeah.
How are you feeling at the minute? And as you say, I know you mentioned earlier you're sort of ticking over to getting there. Have you got some big plans ready for if and when the season does resume?
Yeah, we constantly keep in touch as a media team on what we're doing, in terms of just giving a few updates here and there on social media. But working from home, there's only really so much you can do when you're not interacting with the players and being able to go to the training ground and stuff like that. So, you just got to think on your toes. What can we do for next season? You've got to think of the rebranding and everything like that. So it's a good chance to have a breather and to sort of take a step back and look at what's been done so far and what you can improve on. And the big thing for me is I'm in a role where I don't sort of have to do everything, myself. We've got a video guy, we've got a graphics guy who's there full time. So you can take advantage of that a lot more, and having a big team, so you can do a lot more. Whereas at Vale, the graphic designer Paige Kelly, she was brilliant, but she was only a volunteer, so there was only so much she could do, as well as the video guy Elliot and the other media assistants, Luke and Connor. There was only so much they can do. As good as they did it, they weren't able to be there full time as much as I would have liked them to be. So to be at a club where now you've got the talent there full time to develop your ideas is really good.
No, mate. So just for those, again, a bit of an insight, looking to get into football and journalism in football, what does the average week look like for you then, Max?
Monday is training ground day, and a Friday. So you sort of go down, you get your interviews with the players, with the manager, and prepare your content for the early bit of the week. It's sort of, the Monday is always the reflection on the weekend, and a lot of your content can actually be based on what the result was on the Saturday. You know, you're not going to post a load of content, happy clappy stuff if you've just got battered at the weekend. And my first game with Millwall was Wigan away. And we actually went, when we were driving up, we went straight back through Stoke-on-Trent. So it was a bit of a weird one, that. But we lost 1-0. It was a great, miserable day. You know, you're in Wigan, you've lost. So the Monday content wasn't great for the following week. But then you sort of, you're straight onto the next game, really. Everything you do during the week is preparing for the Saturday game. So, you know, you do your press releases, you do your interviews, you do your write-ups, you know, you do a lot of, if there's content, you know, the On This Day stuff. This time 5 years ago, we beat our local rivals, that sort of stuff. You always try and look at ways you can reminisce, but also keep it modern. And a lot of my responsibility at Millwall is preparing for a home match day, making sure the press have got the right accreditation, making sure everything's ready for the match day.
So, moving on to match day, do you have a set routine, any superstitions or rituals that you go through?
Yeah, I always, at Vale, it's sort of to do with uniform. At Vale, I always wore a tracksuit. At Millwall, for home games, I wear a suit. Away games, you wear the tracksuit. So whenever I wear a tracksuit, I always make sure I'm wearing the trainers. If we've won on a Saturday, I'll wear the same trainers for the next game. So at Vale, if, you know, I was wearing my white Nike shoes and we won, I'd always wear them the next game. If we then lost that next game, I'd have to change the trainers. I couldn't wear those trainers again. Right. And that was just my superstition.
No, and it's interesting because obviously we ask players if they've got superstitions or coaches, and it's nice to see sort of the other side of the game where, you know, you prepare just as intensely as players do. So just moving sort of on as we come towards the end of the chat, have there been any awkward moments when interviewing or questioning anyone? Obviously, you don't have to name names, but if they ever point blank refuse to answer.
No, there's not. I've never had like an interview where they're just like, "No, I'm not talking to you." I have had awkward interviews though. There was a new player signed for Vale, and we were trying to do the interview, you know, with on getting a reaction basically for him signing. But he was quite young. You could tell he hadn't really done many interviews before, so his answers were quite short, and you didn't expect it to sort of cut short like that. So you'd be like, "Oh, you must be really delighted to sign for the club." It's like, "Yeah, I'm really happy," and then boom, and you're like that.
Conversation called Max.
Yeah, so you sort of got to think on your feet. But probably the most awkward ones were with Neil Aspin when he was manager of Port Vale, and that's not because we didn't have a problem with each other at all. We got along with each other really well, and I've got a lot of respect for Neil. But there was the one that always springs to mind was a game at Morecambe away in December 2018. The club wasn't doing too well on the pitch. The results weren't great, and we were 2-0 down. And I think he took off Manny Oyeleke and brought on Scott Quigley, and then Anthony Kay scored with 10 minutes to go, and then Scott Quigley actually set up Tom Pope to score the equaliser against Morecambe. So we drew 2-2. It came out of nowhere, and I think the fans booed the substitution when Manny came off for Scott Quigley. And I said, you know, you made the switch and Scott Quigley set up the equaliser for Popey, you know, and at the end of the day, we've rescued a point there. And you could tell he sort of turned to the camera and said, you know, and for those that don't know what I'm doing, maybe I do. And he sort of stared straight down the camera. And I was just sort of I was like, anyway, Neil, like just turning your focus to the next thing. And that was a real awkward one. Yeah. Because you could tell he was angry. You could tell he wanted to let off a bit of steam to the fans because they had booed his decision. And then in the end, it turned out to work.
Yeah.
But then the most awkward one probably came a couple of weeks later when we played Lincoln away on New Year's Day, and Manny actually scored a last-minute equaliser. And it was a great point against the league leaders. But a lot of fans have been calling for Neil to go a couple of days before. I think we lost to Grimsby or Oldham. And he basically just came out in the interview and just said, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be the manager during the next game. Because I said to him, you know, Colchester up next, you know, it's a big game back at home. Looking forward to it. And he said, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be the manager for it. And I'm just sort of like, you know, and I was just thinking in my head, I was like, wow, like I wish you could have given me a heads up that you were going to say something like this. So I had to think, right, you know, we don't want that to overshadow a really good point at Lincoln. You know, it's whatever happens with his management at Vale, you know, we can't overshadow the fact that it's a good point. You know, the players show fight, and that's how we had to sort of spin it. But that really threw me in an awkward one, because you're midway through an interview and the manager just goes, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be here next week. And you're like, what do I do?
Just moving on to sort of what advice would you give to anybody looking to break through? And certainly you mentioned one would be thinking on your feet.
Thinking on your feet, yeah, and over preparing questions, because, you know, like with that new signing, when he signed for the club, you're going to have situations where they just sort of stop you like that, and you have to over prepare just so you can keep asking questions if it ever does get a bit awkward or you need a bit of, you know, space to fill in that. But yeah, always listen to the interview as well, and actually listen to what the person's saying, because you could miss something vital there. And you see a lot of people do interviews when they just read off a piece of paper because they've got 5 questions prepared. And a lot of people wouldn't have just, you know, people would have maybe missed what Neil Aspin said there. It would have been like, yeah, I'm walking away. And then you look at your sheet of paper and you go, anyway, on to the next one. And if you stick to that rigid routine, you've completely missed what he said there. If he says something positive and sort of something you weren't expecting, you could be like, oh, so you mentioned someone there. And then you develop that question. So always have, you know, over prepare on questions, but make sure you're listening to the person you're speaking to as well.
So over prepare, good listening skills.
Yeah.
Think on your feet. So what does the future hold for you now, Max? What you mentioned earlier, obviously the Premier League aspirations, but where would you see your future moving now?
You know, I'm at a great club at the moment in a great league. And I'm going to pick up as much experience as I can and try and do as much as I can at this level, because, you know, I think the Championship is one of the most competitive leagues in the world. And the fact that we've got such a competitive second league says a lot. So I'm going to try my best to do what I can with Millwall's media team and produce some really good work here. But I'd love to work in the Premier League. You know, I think anyone would, you know, because you're working around the best clubs, the best players, you know, and going to the best grounds. You know, if you're lucky enough to get into like a top 4 team, you could be going to Champions League games and reporting on those sort of games. So I'd love to hopefully reach those sort of levels one day. You know, I'm very passionate about my presenting. I love to get my personality across on camera, and I try to do a bit of presenting with Vale and stuff like that, you know, on camera and off camera in terms of the Vale podcast and stuff like that. So, you know, going down that sort of route, I'd really like to explore maybe in the future. But at the moment, like, you know, I just want to do my best with Millwall's media team.
I'm pretty sure those who've listened to the podcast will agree in that you'll be successful whichever route you go down. Just before we do finish off the podcast, we've got a little bit of a quick fire question round, and usually it is based around football, so I've had to sort of adjust it a little bit. But who was your best friend in football?
I'd probably get a load of stick about this with the in-betweeners memes and that, but like Christian Montano, I'm really, really close with him. You know, he's a top bloke. James Gibbons as well. I got along with Gibbo really well. I keep in touch with both of them. I keep in touch with a lot of the Vale players, but probably like, you know, Gibbo and Monty at Vale. I worked a lot with Monty in terms of, you know, helping him promote what he wanted to do in terms of helping people with their mental health and everything like that. And just keeping in touch with him in general. You know, he's a top bloke and he was really good with me. Popey was absolutely class with me. He took me under his wing and really helped me, you know, settle in terms of working with them as a squad. But probably like Monty or Gibbo. But there's one guy who works at Port Vale called Will Kinson. And I think he's been there about 16 years. And when I arrived, he was a kitchen porter. Now he's sort of the handyman around the club. And I always say every club needs a Will Kinson because he literally knows the club inside out. He's a bit dopey. He's not the smartest, but he's got a heart of gold. And he's one of those sort of characters behind a football club that doesn't get sort of, he doesn't get the credit he deserves for in terms of what he does for the football club behind the scenes, and sort of it's a sort of like a glue between the staff, just the way he makes people laugh and everything like that. So, Monty, Gibbo and Will Kinson, yeah.
Who's been your toughest interviewee?
Danny Pugh. Not because he's awkward or anything, but because he's so well media trained. Yeah. He's one of them that can say a lot, but it means absolutely nothing. Like, you can ask him a question and you can just tell he's been there and done it in terms of, interviews and everything like that. And we'd always have a laugh about it because, especially after like youth team games where he would manage them, I'd be like, right, come on, we're doing an interview now. And he'd just be like, I don't want to, like, not in a nasty way. He'd just try and, wind me up a bit like that. So when we would do them, I'd ask him a question and he practically could just answer every single question I've got prepared in like 20 seconds. And then you're sort of looking at your thing, you're like, oh, well, you've sort of already asked that one, answered that one. So what can I do here? And he always does he does the team news with BBC Radio Stoke before the game as well. And me, Lee Blakeman, and Matt Sandos, whoever was doing it for BBC Radio Stoke, we would always say, right, you've got to get to 2 minutes with him, see if you can get to 2 minutes. But Fury would always manage just to get everything he needed out really short and sharp. Yeah. And it kill you in a nice way. But yeah, Fury in a good way. Well,
interestingly enough, I've got a call with Danny on Monday. So thanks for the heads up on that. I won't expect an hour-long podcast on that one. Yeah. Best trainer you've seen? So training days.
Probably Luke Joyce or David Worrell. They all seem to be, giving their all out on the training pitch, and they're grafters at the end of the day. Nathan Smith, always strong as an ox in training, and you always saw him in the gym as well. So yeah, probably them three. They were always class.
Worst dressed?
Tom Pope, because he's only got one tracksuit, literally one tracksuit. It's a grey Adidas one, I think it is, or Nike. I can't remember what brand it is, but he'd just wear the same tracksuit every single day coming in. And he's I think everyone says about his tracksuit, he just wears the same tracksuit every single day. So probably have to give it to Popey.
I'll not spoil it for the listeners, but we spoke to David Worrell, and funnily enough, Popey was named as the worst dressed on that one as well. So
yeah, it's got to be Popey.
That should be interesting. Your best interview to date?
Probably with Popey after Man City, or the Robbie Williams one. But the Popey one after City, that was just an absolute privilege just to sit down with Popey and just talk to someone who supports Port Vale Football Club, and they've just achieved one of their dreams and scored at one of the best stadiums in the world against one of the best teams in the world, and just given everyone connected with Port Vale, they'll never forget, because he scored that header.
Yeah.
So to sit down with Popey, and we had a good laugh about it. I said, you've sent social media into absolute overdrive, because he literally did, and we had a really good chat, a really good interview, and that was probably one of my favourites, because there was no expectations after that game. Everyone was in a good mood. No one expected anything from the game. So to be able to sit back with Popey like that, and just talk to him about that moment was special.
Excluding the Man City game, best ground you've been to?
Best ground? Bradford was a very nice ground. Really, really liked Bradford. It still had that old, traditional football ground. That was really, really good. It's a massive ground as well, and the atmosphere was really good there. Vale Park, you've got to mention Vale Park. It's one of the best grounds in League Two, and when the fans are singing there, it's a fantastic place to be at. you don't exactly get blessed with incredible grounds at League Two level. Like you said earlier, you go from the glitz of the Man City game, and then on the Tuesday night we were in Salford, losing 3-0 in the Checker Trade game. So yeah, Bradford or MK Dons was a nice ground, not in terms of the atmosphere, but it's a smart ground.
Stuff. And then just finally from us, is there anybody you would recommend to come onto the podcast? Anybody you think they're listening?
Yeah, probably Louis Dodds. Such a good bloke, top bloke. He's probably got 1,000 stories that he could tell you about Port Vale and the times that he's been there, because obviously he was there during the promotion season. He's really good mates with Popey, and he had his second spell at Port Vale, but he's just a top bloke. And you can have a really good laugh with him. So yeah, probably Dodsey. Yeah,
we'll put something out to Louis and see if we can get him on.
Yeah, definitely.
Max, Lou, I tried to keep it around the hour mark, and I felt so comfortable, mate. I could probably chat for another 2 or 3 hours around football with you. But I just want to say again, thank you for taking the time to speak to us, mate. I know it's not a busy time for all, but we've all got our personal lives that we want to get on with. And
no problem. Thanks for having me.
I'm pretty sure those that have worked with you will agree you'll go far in the game, mate. And we wish you here at PCT all the best moving forward in your career.
Thank you very much, top man. Cheers.
Great stuff. Cheers, Max. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Ductig brand is on hand for all of your coaching needs, whether it be to plan sessions or take notes whilst observing games. Ductig are able to cover all of your needs. Use the discount code Irvine20 at checkout to receive a discount. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy the content that we're trying to bring to you. Don't forget, new episodes will be released every Monday. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.